In trying to find the etymology of the term pretty privilege, I turned to various sites to describe this term. While I couldn't find a definite creator of the term, as I don't really think there is one, the term has definitely morphed into something that I would describe as internet speak. I have actually never heard anyone in real life use the term pretty privilege, so that's why I'm coming to this conclusion that it's an internet word. So I turned to the internet to explain what pretty privilege is. Some people describe pretty privilege to be a psychosocial phenomenon in which being more physically attractive can supply more opportunities. Some describe it as providing the perks of power, happiness, and freedom. And while the good people at Urban Dictionary describe it as someone who gets clout, opportunities, and becomes more successful in life because of how attractive they are. Regardless of its definitions, I'm of the opinion that there are terms that already exist that get to the heart of beauty and power discourse, and we don't need to use the term pretty privilege anymore. The term pretty privilege, in my opinion, is actually a very limiting term that in many ways reifies what people are trying to dismantle and disrupt by using this word pretty privilege. So I think that it is now time for us to throw away prettiness and privilege to the wayside and to have a more sobering discussion about beauty and its manifestations of power, anti-blackness, colorism, fat phobia, and we must talk about ugliness as well. So before we really get into the meat of what I'm talking about, I want to briefly talk about power. So most of my understanding of power comes from the readings I did as an undergrad about Foucault. Side note, something I just learned recently is that a lot of Foucault's ideas were informed by the philosophies and struggles of the Black Panthers, which is not surprising. That's not surprising. Anyways, as Foucault says, power is a relation. It's not a thing. We can think of power in a broad sense as governance. We can govern a society, a group, a person, a family. In this governing, one's behavior can be determined according to techniques that allow the relations of power to be exercised. So I think the most visible understanding of power that most people have is repressive power. For example, you may have a boss who has a group of employees, but the employees are not following the boss's orders, and so the boss is threatening the employees so that the orders can be fulfilled. That is an example of repressive power. But we know that in this situation, the boss doesn't actually have any power because there's an understanding that the boss shouldn't have to threaten his employees to fulfill his orders. His employees should just fulfill his orders. That is what we call normalizing power. Normalizing power is power that shapes our views and beliefs, our desires, and the idea that power has not been forced upon us. It's the power that ensures that we do what our boss wants us to do at work, because we either believe in this hierarchy at work or we one day want to become our boss. And this sort of power is everywhere. On TV, at home, at school, at churches, in disciplines like science, and in so many other institutions. So, with this understanding of power, can we say that there is power in being beautiful? So my ideas on this are actually always shifting. So I could very well have an opinion about beauty and power, and then within a week, I've changed my mind, which seems to always happen. But at this very moment, I believe that there is some normalizing power in what has been constructed as beauty. And while power can both be repressive and positive, because power is a relation, it's not necessarily good or bad. Power is exercised, though, through abjection of the grotesque and the monstrous and the anti-human in beauty politics. Now, I'm going to be careful in how I discuss beauty and ugliness, not only because people aren't really ready to fully interrogate these ideas beyond the surface, hence the term pretty privilege, but also because acceptance and or abjection from these categories of beautiful and ugly can hold great consequences for many people. And a lot of those consequences are violent. So I talk about beauty often on my channel, and I'm often thinking of it in relation to being a cisgender Black woman, fat phobia, anti-Blackness, colorism. And this is because the power of beauty has shown itself in my personal life as a cis Black woman in these particular ways. I believe that discussions of desirability and beauty are not simple because our access to desirability literally controls so much of our life. While these discussions are often dominated by cisgender women, beauty and its politics affect everyone, not just women. Beauty can affect if you can get a job, how you make money, if you go to prison, if you can find love, if you are deemed human, if you can be on TV and in movies, and if you can die. Beauty is a violent thing. As some people may have gathered from what has been said on this channel, I do not believe in the myths and cliches that people spread online and in real life about beauty. I do not believe that we are all beautiful.
I just want to reiterate once again, nobody is born beautiful. Beautiful people aren't just beautiful. It's not a natural or inherent thing. Someone is beautiful because of fat phobia, ableism, racism, Eurocentric beauty standards. You are not inherently beautiful. It is a construct. And I know this might stress some people out, but it's not real. Beautiful people aren't just born beautiful. They become beautiful. If you're born beautiful, explain to me how is it possible that you can go into a different space, a different country, and be considered ugly? Exactly, because it's not real. It's a construct.
Because some of us are not given access to beauty historically and as a condition of our exclusion from humanity. For some of us, our darkness, Blackness, fatness, our features, our disabilities, or our existence outside of cis heteronormativity are not included in this vision of beauty. In fact, for some of us, for beauty to even exist in the way that it's understood and the way that we know of it, it requires that many of us be abject and that many of us be the grotesque, be the monster, be the ugly. And what is very interesting, especially to me about beauty, is that beauty is not a stable thing. I find that when I was heavily invested in beauty as a social currency, I was constantly pursuing it, and I was always lacking. The understanding of who and what was beautiful was always really different in every space that I went into, and so I was always left doing X, Y, and Z in order to catch up, and it was never enough. In fact, I came close to destroying my body and myself in pursuit of this beauty a lot of the time. I mean, let's just talk about the casual pain we put ourselves to have beauty. I know everyone can attest to this, especially if you're a woman. Growing up, you always heard beauty is pain, and this was always being said when I was getting my hair done. I was always hearing this. My mom would always say, beauty is pain. And I would be sitting through relaxers that burnt my scalp. I'd be sitting through painful braids that I wouldn't be able to move my neck for like 2 days. And I'd have weaves that were too tight for my scalp. And then I would have like a really inflamed and itchy scalp for like a week or two. And all for what? Beauty. Like, can you imagine the amount of tremendous pain that we put ourselves through just so that we can fulfill what? And so, in my opinion, all of this is what makes beauty a very violent thing. So I've realized that I really haven't spoken about ugliness on this channel, which is a shame, but also probably speaks to how much work that still needs to be done personally when it comes to my choice in divesting from beauty. Because honestly, what is a discussion about beauty politics without a discussion of ugliness? So ugliness is not just the quality of a person's appearance. As noted in the book on the politics of ugliness, in Western contexts and histories especially, ugliness has long functioned as a social category that demarcates one's rights and access to social, cultural, and political spaces. People who are unsightly, a la ugly, are framed not only as unworthy of being seen or having eyes set upon them, but they then become the target of interventions to curb the possibility of their causing aversion and discomfort in others. Often when ugliness is spoken about, it is discussed through the reaction to ugliness. We discuss it in abjection. And a great example of this is everybody's visceral reaction to Lizzo and her fatness. So we all know who Lizzo is. I mean, if you don't know, you've probably been living under a rock. Lizzo is a musician and she is also a fat Black woman. And constantly we are seeing, comments, discussions, videos of people discussing her in the abject. For the logic of beauty to continue to work and be upheld, Lizzo must be in the space of ugliness and of lack. Our visceral responses to the plainness, the grotesque, and or monstrosity, which people have all mentioned in connection to Lizzo, are about maintaining our social relations and social boundaries. And as Julia Kristeva notes in her work on the abject, we do this also because of the possibility that at some point in our lives, we can and will likely become the ugly. For instance, a great example is just the aging process. We know that our culture highly glorifies a youthful physique, a youthful face, a youthful body. That in itself is an opportunity for any of us to become the ugly, going through just the natural process of aging. And so our reactions to ugliness is always so visceral because we know that just like Lizzo, who is deemed ugly in the sense of like her fatness and her being a Black woman, we are also close to this ugliness. Like we are never too far away from it. What I find also really interesting about ugliness is that ugliness can also be placed on you. So if you choose to opt out of beauty, ugliness is often always put upon you. We hear this all the time. A great example, my past video about the diverse and hypergamy girlies. A lot of people didn't like what I had to say. And can you guess what a lot of people were saying about me as a person in the comments? People were like, oh, well, you're ugly. And that's why you can't take anything from these girls because you're ugly and you're never going to be like these girls. You hear it all the time. Black feminists are bad and ugly and that's why no man wants you and therefore that's why you're a man hater. Again, this is because femininity in particular requires intricate upkeep and economic investment. Honing a plain or unaltered aesthetic in order to reject normative body standards will often get you maligned. Another good example of this is the experiences of transgender women. For a lot of transgender women, they are expected to perform normative femininity to supreme standards with literally no margin of error, no margin of failure. And they face discrimination and violence if they fail in fulfilling the category of woman. But it really does not have to be this way. So in a 2011 speech called Moving Toward the Ugly, A Politic Beyond Desirability, Mia Mingus says, "We all run from the ugly, and the farther we run from it, the more we stigmatize it, and the more power we give beauty. Our communities are obsessed with being beautiful and gorgeous and hot. What would it mean if we were ugly? What would it mean if we didn't run from our own ugliness or each other's? What would happen if we let go of being beautiful? What would happen if we stopped chasing being pretty and being beautiful? What in you is ugly? And why is it really that bad?" Of course, I'm not trying to obfuscate that there is real violence included in being ugly. Like, people treat you violently when you choose to identify with ugliness. For instance, like I said, when you choose to opt outside of beauty politics, you will see the way that people will become very violent with you because you are choosing not to participate in beauty. But as I said earlier, my ideas about beauty and power are also not fixed, because I also do not completely think that even beauty itself saves you from violence. And that's why I have questions about the power that beauty really has. Because we see it all the time. People, beautiful people, especially women, but beautiful people still face violence. So I've come to the conclusion, and I've just come to the opinion, that beauty is not a good investment. I also just wanted to add that my understanding and thinking of ugliness and beauty and fat phobia comes from a host of writers and activists, but especially the writer Deshaun Harris, and especially from the book On the Politics of Ugliness. I would really suggest people read what Deshaun has written. It's amazing. And also read this book, because it really gets you to open your eyes to really understand that an investment in the beauty is a mistake, girls. It's a mistake, girls. It's a mistake. So I end this video with a hope for everyone, not just cisgender women, literally everybody, that we start divesting from beauty, because it is always going to keep us at a state of lack. So thank you for watching. Let me know if you've begun to think about beauty politics and your investment into beauty, and how beauty and ugliness has impacted your life in the comments down below. I'd really like to hear what people have to say. Also, I'd really like to hear what people have to say about the ideas of beauty and power, because I think there's a lot there. So don't forget to like and share the video and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button as well. If you like what I do on here, you can follow me at Black Wahala on all platforms. So that includes Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, to hear more from me. Bye, besties.